Hi guys, this is Breaker, and as you can see at the loading screen, Tydrokos is actually playing against someone who spawned as random. That is a random level, a random Masters level player that he's facing off against. But in the lower right hand corner, let's go ahead and give an introduction to the star of the show. His name is Tydrokos. And in the upper left hand corner, TunaConsuma. He again entered the game as random, but spawned as Zerg. So we're inevitably going to see a probe scout from Tydro if he was to be entirely safe. Eight pylon, and the probe moves out. Now, talking about this map for just a bit, it is a rather large map for just a two-player one. As you can see, there's the natural right here. I think it's a little far from the main, to be quite honest with you. The thirds are in rather interesting locations. This one, if you want to lock it in extremely safely, you could just go ahead and put some lings out here and kill the rocks. But of course, in the perspective of our Zerg player here, it's going to be extremely difficult to break down these rocks and make sure he's got a 100% secured entrance to that natural without going to roach tech on 2 base. I say without going to roach tech because he's going to have to find a fast way to kill those rocks, separating the natural from that location for a third. This one, on the other hand, it is wider open and it's easier to take, but at the same time it's quite susceptible to timings from Protoss. Colossi can also skip down here and back up as they please, but it's extremely rare to find a 2-base Colossus timing without forcing your Protoss opponent into turtling for a long time. And Tydro, he did put the first pylon down in the main. That is because he was playing against random. He didn't know if it was another Protoss, if it was a Terran, or otherwise. And this probe, he's, he can take it back whenever he wants, but if he just keeps on attacking this hatchery non-stop, it's going to be in yellow HP when it finishes. And this is interesting. We actually have a gas opener from TunaConsuma, so one thing that I know this can lead into is maybe a Baneling bust timing of some sort, but for now, let's just try and focus on this just being a Speedling opening. Of course, we do have the gateway going down here in a forward position for Tydro. He'd put the forge down in his main. Nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of make the SimCity a little more difficult to achieve, and I think I see a susceptible timing where Zerglings can actually get into the main if he is not careful. And of course, one thing that I admire about Tydro is he was not banking on being risky with his probe here and throwing down some cannons and pylons and taking down the natural for TunaConsuma. Speaking of cannons, this one's just now finishing up. The cybernetics core is kind of just sticking out a little bit. It's in a forward position, not the safest position for it to be in, but of course, as long as he doesn't encounter something like a 2-base timing with, what's the word I'm looking for, Hydra's in the mix, he's going to be just fine. Probe moves out in a very interesting timing. Those lings actually passed right by it. I wonder if perhaps TunaConsuma saw them, but he was actually running past them because he wanted to try and get some lings into the natural and then later on the main. It sounds like these lings are actually, these lings have the worst job of the game right now. And if you guys didn't know what that means, that just means breaking down these rocks. Because with each hit, they actually do only 2 damage to it. Looks like these lings haven't, the guys at the bottom of the ramp haven't been told to click on this just yet. And interestingly enough, we actually have a very sneaky probe from Tydro going into the main. I always think to myself, curses, that probe actually got in, and this is what he sees. Second gas going, and a lair on the way. This, I want to say, I know, if I was Zerg in this position, I would be thinking, okay, what 2-base mutas into Expo. And it sounds perfectly valid. There's nothing wrong with that assumption. We do have the other 2 extractor, well, just 1 extractor for now, being put down at the third. There's a spine crawler going down in a forward position, and every single bit of this game except for, what's the word I'm looking for? Every single bit of this game looks more and more like Idra's 2-base Muta timing, except for the fact that we didn't have a 14-14. Yes, this Ling only doing 2 damage per hit on the rocks. It looks like this Ling is actually being put in position to take the Xel'Naga Watchtower. So far, no significant tech ups. You just have Spine Crawlers being tacked on and a couple of Stargates going down for Tydro. Looks like he really likes the Stargates versus Zerg. And there's a Spire. I did call it out. There's a few too many workers on the main. They need to be transferred to the natural. So this kind of strikes me as just a little bit fishy. Not shenanigan-y, but I definitely want to say that our Zerg really needs to open up his eyes just a little bit. And now we got Tydro, I think, getting ready to move out with some gateway unit pressure. Perhaps just a very rough composition of Stalkers and Zealots. Something that won't cost too much gas because he does need to save a lot of it, for Void Rays. Ling's just basically moving out. Trying to make sure there's no proxy pylons anywhere. But this is interesting. Did I just see this right? I thought I saw a blue dot on the minimap going into the natural of TunaConsuma. And just one too few workers on the natural. The main is oversaturated by, okay. Basically, for optimal saturation on any mineral line with 8 patches, you just need 16 workers there, guys. That's it. So he's oversaturated by about 13 workers on his main. And he can go ahead and pull them off the line. That hatch has been done for a while. There's a few things that just look a little silly about this in my perspective. His timing's just a little bit poor. But I think he's just, I don't want to say he's trolling, but I want to say he's I want to say that maybe Zerg is not the main race of this player. Muta's coming in, and where exactly are they going to go? They're going to fly right over a photon cannon into the mineral line. And we see nothing except for a photon overcharged Nexus right here to deal with them. Tydro trying to put a Zealot on the Xel'Naga Watchtower here, but of course the Lings and the Mutas will shut that down. And there's nothing really to contest the one Zealot going to this one as well. Yes, more and more Mutas being tacked on. Lots of gas income for TunaConsuma. And now we see what was originally going to be a strong Void Ray composition being supplemented with mostly Phoenixes because they can make shorter work of Mutas. They do get a buff versus light, while Mutas don't get a buff versus anything. Zerglings get us around on that Zealot that Tydro sends out. And looks like right now we have a lot of Mutas actually coming together right now. Interesting. And a hallucinated Void Ray moving out. This is actually quite interesting. He doesn't see that as the third, but I think that means that Tydro is basically blind to this one being the third. I think this is a better choice for Zerg because it can be better more defensively as long as the rocks are broken down appropriately. There's a burrowed Ling here, quite annoying by Zerg. And now there's some gateways being tacked on right here. Instead of rocks being broken down, just some gateways. Not a bad idea. But of course, all these Phoenixes are going to come into play, and they're going to make short work of the Mutas very quickly. It's just that Tydro isn't opening his eyes, and that is a lot of damage that's going to be dealt out on the mineral line. That's just not pretty, no. 9 probes taken out altogether. That's 59 workers to 66. I want to say that Tydro, given the expectations of a Protoss player in PvZ, is not doing all that bad. He did lose a few probes. That's money he's not getting back, and they're all just basically right here doing nothing. But at the same time, I want to say he's doing better than, say, our Zerg player is presently. Speaking of, he's going for +2 Carapace upgrades. That is, say, our Zerg. And if Tydro can kill some Overlords, that'll actually be worthwhile in the essence of supply blocking his opponent. We do have +2 flyer attacks on the way for TunaConsuma, but I want to say that, you know, he's basically on borrowed time. We have Tydro doing nothing but cranking out Phoenixes. And Phoenixes, you know, the mutas just don't really beat Phoenixes en masse because, really, Phoenixes have this buff versus light. You can see it right here, guys. 10 damage versus light, and they actually shoot quite rapidly, giving them some very, I want to say, not very, but rather high DPS, and that was a little strange. Just the timing that we saw those spore crawlers going down at, and that is a lot of spore crawlers at the third. Alright, here we are. Corruptor's actually coming into the mix as well. They actually are a different story versus Phoenixes. They do particularly well. And behind this, it seems that we have the Twilight Council going down as well as a lot more gateways. The Twilight Council, of course, is to give a path to tech up to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not Dark Templars, but definitely High Templar. There we go. See, this is the crazy thing, guys. I have to think all day about how to say a unit name in English, but I've memorized all the unit names in this game in Chinese. Except for, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, some abilities, like I don't know how to say time warp in Chinese. It's a little absurd. You know, my Chinese is not better than my English by any means, but of course it's, you know, I'm learning, and I love learning Chinese. But behind all this, we see both players teching up, and this is a fleet beacon going down now, so that means we're going to see either some carriers come into play, a mothership, a full-blown mothership, not a mothership core, or we're going to see, I'm trying to think here, you know, we're just going to see any combination of all those. We're definitely, Tempests are also a possibility. Phoenix is coming by here, just making sure there's no extra expo, and Tydro was actually looking at those Phoenixes when they came by, and, oh, this is actually kind of silly. I don't think he saw this. No, he did. Oh, he did. Actually looks like a spire cocoon, if you will. Void Rays, last of them being tacked out, or excuse me, cranked out right now, and this is the, oh man, this is actually going to increase our Phoenix range by 2. Tydro realizes what he's up against right now. Infestor, Corruptor, Muta. I don't believe I've heard of a more interesting combination before in my life, but I'm eager to see how this works out. I'm a little curious as to whether or not, you know, what's interesting is TunaConsuma has very little vision on his opponent. I would start throwing changelings around like mad if I was him. APM not entirely optimal for a Masters League Zerg. Lots of defensive photon cannons with an Artosis pylon watching them at the 6 o'clock-ish expo for Tydro. And the Zealots are going to come in here and make short work of the hatchery, while the Phoenixes just basically play point guard and hold their ground against all these mutas. Now here we go. How's this going to work out? You know, I mean, Tydro is not oblivious to what's going on. He saw that there was a, what's the word I'm looking for? There were infestors on the ground, and if there were fungal growths going into his Phoenixes, if they were grouped up like they were just now, that would have been critical. It could have been, you know, I think it could have costed Tydro the game. Now we have High Templars being morphed into Archons. It seems that Tydro knows what he's up against now, and we have Protoss Air Armor on the way along with Psionic Storm, and 4 probes being cranked out at a time. I want to say that eventually, if this trend continues, we're going to see basically Tydro throwing away all of his workers. We may not see the same thing from Zerg because, of course, one thing that Zerg can do to make their workers more cost-effective is morph them into static defenses such as the Spore Crawlers or Spine Crawlers. One thing that our Zerg is not doing that I do not approve of is not spreading creep, but of course it is a random player, in case you guys didn't know that. And now we have a bunch of infestors over here throwing down infested Terrans, opting to take down these cannons and then put a siege onto the 4th-ish base of Tydro. And now those are some beautiful fungal growths, but I don't think this is quite panning out for Tydro just yet. Holy cow, the Phoenixes are trying to chase down these Corruptors. The Corruptors are not armored units, but just how the hell else is this going to work out? You know, this is actually kind of working in Tydros' favor. But if we saw TunaConsuma with a significant number of Blue Lords, it might have been a different story. And in turn, we will see TunaConsuma lose his base at the 12 o'clock position. Meanwhile, using, you know, I don't think this is a huge loss. It's 300 minerals and definitely a little bit of income. But at this stage, I want to say that the amount of income he has off of this base is not equivalent to the rest of the bases he has altogether. Both players relatively even in income, even after TunaConsuma lost that. So one thing he has to concentrate on now is remaxing and going for the proper late game composition. The biggest problem that we're going to see him facing, the biggest challenge we're going to see him facing, is finding a way to kill the Void Rays, the High Templar, and the Void Rays, the High Templar, and basically anything else that comes out in between. Here are some Archons. They're going to take down this third base, and it's just going to be easy. Okay, so never mind. It looks like TunaConsuma actually not able to remax. I'm wondering what his biggest mistake all throughout this was. He's got a lot of Corruptors, 24 of them. They're going to make short work of anything that flies, even the Void Rays. There's just one Void Ray left, but as long as they group up, it's going to be difficult for them to really fight off anything. And they don't shoot ground. That's like 4 Void Rays right there. It looks like we're going to have the Corruptors take them down. They took down 2 of them. But as long as the Archons are in the mix here, we're not going to see him be able to stop anything. He does have an Ultralisk Cavern that just finished. And this is only a handful of Corruptors. And now all of the Archons are underneath the main army of TunaConsuma. And that is just one great big Zerg massacre. And TunaConsuma was defeated and thus left the game. Poor guy. I want to say he did good. He did good, but there was a few mistakes he made here and there, and those mistakes just cost him the game. I think the biggest one was not getting the Great Aspire Tech out early enough, maybe not putting down enough static defenses. Look at how many minerals he's floating right here, guys. 4,000. Broodlords work great with spine crawlers, guys. So, yeah. Anywho, guys, this has been Breaker. If you guys like what you see here, just go ahead and click on that subscribe button. It should have been blinking throughout the entire video. I'll see you guys next time.